Nobody inside the industry saw it coming. Not the fans, not the critics, not even the insiders who spent years watching careers rise and fall like tides. Because when Jamal Robert appeared again, after years of silence, speculation, and mystery, he didn't return with a staged announcement or a glossy PR campaign. He came back with something far more powerful: honesty. In an exclusive interview that spread across social media within minutes, Jamal opened the door to a past he had never dared to revisit publicly. The world expected a simple promotional chat. Instead, it became one of the most emotionally charged revelations of his entire career. And as the interview unfolded, it became clear that this was not just a comeback. It was the story of a young artist rebuilding himself from the ruins of pressure, trauma, and unspoken pain. It wasn't supposed to be this raw. The interview was scheduled like any other press appearance, a simple talk about new music, upcoming plans, and what he had been working on. There was no hint, at least not publicly, that anything deeper was on the table. But from the moment Jamal walked onto the set, something about his demeanor told a different story. There was a calmness in his eyes, but also a weight, an unspoken heaviness that seemed to follow every breath. Before the first question even landed, fans watching live began sending comments. "He looks different. He seems older. Is he okay?" And then the first unexpected shift happened. Instead of answering a harmless question about his new creative direction, Jamal paused. It wasn't a dramatic pause for effect. It was the kind of silence born from years of holding something inside. What followed wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't polished, it was personal, shockingly personal. And as the words left his mouth, it became clear that this was no ordinary interview. Because for the first time, Jamal was ready to confront the shadows of his past, even if the world wasn't ready to hear them. But the deeper he went, the more the truth began to take shape. The dream that millions wanted became the nightmare he lived. When Jamal first stepped onto the Idol stage, he was young, talented, hopeful, unprepared for the storm ahead. The audience saw a rising star. The producer saw potential. The judges saw someone who could go far. But what nobody saw was the strain tightening around him as each week passed. Idol is a machine, a powerful one, and when it chooses you, it demands everything. Song choices weren't always choices. Advice wasn't always optional. And the comparison culture among fans was merciless. What Jamal revealed in the interview hit much harder than anyone expected. The pressure hadn't only been professional, it had been psychological. He spoke about the confusion of trying to understand who he was while the world constantly tried to define him. He described nights where he doubted whether he deserved to be on the show at all, days when he felt he was disappointing everyone, and moments backstage that left emotional bruises no one ever saw. And then he mentioned the incident, one specific event never revealed before that shifted everything. He didn't explain it in detail, he didn't need to. The way he described the silence afterward, the feeling of breaking under the weight of expectations, was enough to understand why that memory followed him long after the camera stopped rolling. But that wasn't the only wound the show left behind. Offstage, the real battle began. The world thinks the final episode of a talent show is the end of a journey. For Jamal, it was only the beginning of a far more difficult chapter. When Idol ended, the noise around him quieted, the lights turned off, the structure that had carried him for months vanished. Suddenly, there were no producers, no schedules, no weekly performances, only silence. Jamal described the days after the finale as the loneliest days of my life. The same fans who cheered for him were now waiting for the next star. The same critics who praised him began shifting their attention elsewhere. And in that vacuum, Jamal began to crumble. Without the constant adrenaline of the show, he was forced to confront questions he had been running from. What was his real identity? Was he singing for himself or for approval? Did he even want the fame everyone assumed he did? Creatively, nothing worked. Songs felt wrong. Demos sounded empty. The industry offered him opportunities, but they came with conditions. Conditions that made him feel even less like the artist he wanted to be. Rumors spread silently. Some said he was burnt out. Others assumed he was struggling with confidence. But nobody truly knew the depth of what he was battling. And just when it felt like things couldn't get worse, the noise returned. The internet became the harshest stage he ever faced. As Jamal drifted out of the spotlight, online negativity grew louder. Comments criticizing his performances resurfaced. Threads mocking him spread across forums. Some questioned whether he was a real artist, while others targeted him more personally. Even old clips from Idol were revived by users who had no idea how deeply their words could cut. What Jamal revealed in the interview wasn't anger, it was exhaustion. The pressure had pushed him to a breaking point, and the constant negativity added fuel to the fire. He admitted losing sleep, revisiting painful memories, and doubting whether returning to music was worth the emotional cost. Industry insiders tried offering solutions. Reinvent your image, release a fast hit, collaborate with a known name. But every suggestion felt like another attempt to mold him into someone he wasn't. And then, in the middle of that chaos, something unexpected arrived. One single message that changed the direction of everything. And that message came from the last person he expected. After years of being quiet, he was ready to speak. Jamal didn't plan to open up. It happened naturally, almost accidentally. During the interview, a question about his absence pushed him into territory he had avoided for years. Instead of giving the usual polite answer, he let the truth slip through. He spoke about the trauma, carefully, with respect, but honestly. He acknowledged that Idol shaped him, but it also hurt him. He admitted that he needed time to heal, time to find himself again. And he revealed moments that fans had never heard before, moments that brought the studio into complete silence. As the interview aired, comments flooded in. Fans apologized for judging him without knowing the full story. Others praised him for speaking openly about emotional struggles so many young artists face. Even fellow Idol alumni posted messages of support. But the biggest revelation wasn't about the past. It was about what he'd been building in the shadows, something the world had no idea was coming. Because while the world thought he was gone, he was creating something powerful. The years of silence were not wasted, they were transformative. Jamal revealed that during his hiatus, he slowly began working on music again. Not the kind he felt pressured to make, not the style producers pushed on him. Music that reflected who he had become. The years of silence were not wasted, they were transformative. He described late-night writing sessions, moments of emotional release, and songs that felt like pages torn from a private journal. He spoke about experimenting with new sounds, deeper tones, more mature lyrics, storytelling shaped by experience rather than expectation. The album was not crafted for radio hits, it was crafted for truth. Each track represented a chapter of his healing process: trauma, growth, self-discovery, forgiveness. He collaborated only with people who understood him, people who told him it's okay to be honest. And as he described the project, something shifted in his voice: pride, relief, ownership. This wasn't Idol Jamal, this was the artist he was always meant to become. But even with a new album ready, one more challenge waited for him. Comebacks are never easy, and his was no exception. Re-entering the public eye came with a storm of expectations. Some fans wanted the Jamal they remembered from Idol, young, innocent, familiar. Others wanted something bold and new. Critics began speculating whether he could ever achieve mainstream success again. Haters resurfaced, questioning his direction before hearing a single note. And the industry, unpredictable as always, began watching closely to see whether his return would be a momentary flash or a lasting evolution. Jamal admitted that stepping back into the spotlight terrified him. But the difference this time was simple. He had found his voice, and he wasn't willing to lose it again. But strength doesn't come from applause. It comes from surviving the silence. Pain didn't break him, it shaped him. The interview revealed something deeper than trauma or struggle: resilience. Jamal spoke with a calmness that only comes from overcoming something heavy. He realized he didn't need universal approval. He didn't need to be perfect. He didn't need to fit into the box Idol once built around him. He only needed to be honest with his music, his fans, and himself. The pain became part of his voice. The struggle became part of his artistry. And through all the doubt, he discovered a confidence untouched by either praise or criticism. And then came the message that defined the entire interview. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. When asked about the negativity he faced, Jamal didn't respond with bitterness. He responded with maturity. He thanked the fans who supported him during the years he disappeared. He forgave those who tore him down without knowing the full story. And he acknowledged that the person he was back then would not have handled this moment the same way. His message spread across social media like wildfire. You don't have to understand my journey, but I hope the music helps you understand yourself. It wasn't a clapback, it was a declaration of self-growth. But the final surprise was something nobody could have predicted. This wasn't a return, it was a transformation. The interview revealed that Jamal wasn't simply coming back, he was starting over. His new album wasn't designed to relive Idol nostalgia, it was created to redefine him entirely. The boy America met years ago had grown into a man with a voice shaped by struggle, resilience, and authenticity. Industry insiders began predicting a resurgence. Fans flooded his page with renewed support, and journalists hailed the interview as one of the most honest conversations an Idol alumnus had ever given. Jamal wasn't stepping back into the spotlight to reclaim something he lost. He was stepping forward into the version of himself he had always been meant to become. The trauma didn't define him. The haters didn't stop him. The silence didn't erase him. It prepared him. This is Jamal Robert, reborn, redefined, and ready for the era he created with his own hands.